It started with something so small I almost thought I imagined it. A coffee mug missing. A window slightly cracked open. My front door, not locked the way I remembered leaving it. I live alone. No roommates, no family nearby, just me and my peace. Or at least I used to have peace before she decided my house was part of her territory. Her name, Corinne Doyle, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. She wore her power like armor, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, always ready to report something. You couldn't mow your lawn without her standing on the curb judging the grass height. But lately, Corinne's been doing more than snooping from the sidewalk. She's been inside my home. The first time I brushed it off. I came home from work to find the back door slightly ajar. I thought maybe I'd forgotten to lock it. But when it happened again, 3 times in 1 week, I knew something wasn't right. Then one evening, I noticed muddy shoe prints leading from my porch to my hallway. My heart dropped. "Hello," I called out. My voice cracked as I stepped inside, holding my phone like a weapon. "Is someone in here?" Silence, just the faint hum of my refrigerator. I followed the prints carefully. They stopped right at my office door, then turned back toward the exit. Someone had been in there. That's when I checked the small decorative vase on my shelf, where I always keep my spare key hidden behind fake flowers. It was gone. That night I barely slept. I installed new locks, put up motion lights, even double-checked my security system, but somehow that gnawing feeling stayed. The next morning, while taking out the trash, I saw her, Corinne, standing by my porch, clipboard in hand, acting like she owned the place. "Morning," she chirped, pretending she just happened to be there. I frowned. "Corinne, were you near my property last night?" Her smile faltered for half a second before she forced it back on. "Oh, of course not. I was just doing a community patrol. Some residents said they saw suspicious activity." Suspicious activity. That was me. I bit back my anger. "You don't have authority to patrol people's property, Corinne. That's trespassing." Her eyes hardened. "Well, someone has to make sure this neighborhood stays safe and clean." That word, clean, rolled off her tongue like an insult. I stepped closer. "If I catch anyone near my home again, I'm calling the police," she scoffed. "Go ahead, but don't be surprised when the HOA finds you for that broken fence slat in your backyard." I didn't even have a broken fence slat. But that's how she operated, making things up to keep you scared of her clipboard. Later that week, I came home to find my trash bins pulled onto the curb on the wrong day, something Corinne loved to fine people for. A small note was taped to my door. "Please remember to comply with community rules. You've been warned." HOA President Corinne Doyle. I crumpled the note in my fist. She was taunting me. I started watching from my window at night. At first, nothing, just the soft glow of porch lights and the hum of crickets. Then on Thursday around 11:30 p.m., I saw her. Corinne, walking up my driveway, no flashlight, no clipboard, just a small purse and her phone. I froze. She looked around, then reached into her bag and pulled out a key. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. She tried it in the lock slowly, quietly. Then the door clicked. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone and hit record through the window glass. Corinne stepped inside, looked around then, like she'd done it 100 times, walked toward my living room. That was it. I stormed out of the back door, circled around, and met her as she stepped out the front. She jumped back, clutching her purse. "Goodness, you scared me." "Scared you," I said, shaking. "What the hell were you doing in my house, Corinne?" Her face went pale, then defensive. "Excuse me, I was checking for a gas leak. You should be thanking me." "A gas leak at midnight?" She adjusted her jacket, trying to regain control. "I'm the HOA president. It's my responsibility to ensure safety." "No, Corinne," I said, voice trembling but firm. "It's trespassing." Her expression shifted, cold, calculating. "Be careful who you accuse," she said quietly. "You wouldn't want to be labeled a problem homeowner." She walked away, leaving muddy footprints on my porch. That night, I couldn't stop replaying her words. "Be careful who you accuse." It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. And if she thought I was going to sit back and let her break into my house again, she had another thing coming. What would you do if your HOA president kept sneaking into your house? Would you confront them or set a trap? After that night, I didn't sleep for 3 days. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against my windows felt like someone testing the locks again. I knew it was her. Corinne had a copy of my key, and she wasn't afraid to use it. I changed the locks again and even installed a new security system. I thought that would finally give me peace. But then 2 days later, I came home from work to find my porch mat slightly shifted and my front door handle wet. Someone had touched it recently. I looked up at the street, and there she was, Corinne Doyle, standing on the sidewalk, pretending to check her phone. The smirk on her face made my stomach twist. I took a deep breath and forced myself to speak. "Corinne, what are you doing out here again?" She looked up, surprised but unbothered. "Oh, I was just checking on property maintenance. There's been some vandalism in the area." I folded my arms. "You mean vandalism like someone else been sneaking onto my property?" Her lips tightened. Don't accuse me of something ridiculous, dear. If your house wasn't so neglected, I wouldn't have to worry about it. Neglected, my house was spotless. I wanted to scream, but instead I just nodded and walked back inside. She wanted me angry. She wanted a reaction. That night I made a decision. If no one was going to believe me, I'd make them believe me. I went on Amazon and ordered 2 small, motion-activated cameras, one for my front porch, one for my living room near the entryway. I even disguised them inside ordinary things, a potted plant and a photo frame. When they arrived, I set them up carefully, testing the angles. Every beep, every flicker of the red light made my heart race. This time, if she came back, I'd catch her. 3 nights passed. Nothing. Then on the 4th night, my phone buzzed at 12:47 a.m. Motion detected. I jumped out of bed, heart pounding, and opened the camera feed. There she was, Karen, standing at my door holding something small, maybe a flashlight or another key. She tried the knob, leaned in, whispered something under her breath, and then backed away. She didn't go inside this time, but she was testing it. I downloaded the clip immediately. Finally, proof. The next morning, I called the police. "Sorry, ma'am," the officer said, glancing at my phone screen. "She didn't actually enter your home. We can't charge trespassing unless she's inside your property without permission." "She tried the door," I said. "She's been inside before, I know it." The officer sighed, sympathetic but unmoved. "Unfortunately, without video proof of her inside your home or causing damage, there's not much we can do. I suggest filing a report with your HOA." I laughed bitterly. "She is the HOA." He raised an eyebrow. "Then I'd suggest finding another way to keep her out." I closed the door as he left, frustration boiling in my chest. Find another way? Oh, I would, but before revenge came fear and loneliness. That night I sat on my couch staring at the blank TV screen, my reflection flickering in the dark glass. My home, my sanctuary, felt like a prison now. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like her shape in the window. I decided to tell my neighbor, Tom, about what was going on. He'd lived next door for years and had his own share of HOA horror stories. When I knocked, he looked surprised to see me. "Hey, you okay? You look pale." "I just need to ask, have you seen Karen around my house lately?" He frowned. "Karen? Yeah, she's been weird. I caught her peeking over my fence last week with a flashlight, said she was checking for code violations." "Would you believe me if I said she's been breaking into mine?" Tom blinked. "Breaking in? Are you serious?" I showed him the video. His face turned red. "That's insane. You need to post that online or something." I shook my head. "Not yet. I want to catch her inside." Tom looked uneasy. "Be careful, man. That woman's got connections. Half the board's afraid of her." "I'm not," I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing. 2 nights later, I got another notification, this time earlier, around 10:15 p.m. Motion detected. I opened the feed, but there was nothing, just the porch light flickering. Still, I had a bad feeling. I walked quietly to the front of the house, heart hammering. When I reached the door, I noticed it wasn't fully shut. It was open, just a crack. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and nudged the door. Inside, I saw it, muddy shoe prints on my hardwood floor. Again, I whispered under my breath, "She's back." I moved through the house slowly, checking each room, my breath shallow. The prints led to my kitchen and stopped near the counter. Nothing seemed stolen, but things were moved. A bowl was slightly off-center. The mail I'd left stacked was shuffled. She'd been here long enough to touch things. Rage mixed with fear in my chest. This wasn't just invasion, it was control. She wanted me to know she could come and go whenever she wanted. The next morning, I went to the HOA office and demanded a meeting. Karen was sitting behind the desk when I walked in, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "Ah, good morning," she said sweetly. "To pay your dues?" I slammed my phone on the counter. "No, Karen, I'm here because I have video evidence of you trespassing on my property." Her face twitched, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, you mean when I was doing my neighborhood safety check?" "Safety check at midnight?" I snapped. "You've been breaking into my house and I have proof. You've gone too far." The other 2 HOA board members looked up, startled. One of them, Mrs. Ellison, whispered, "Karen, is that true?" Karen gave a tight laugh. "Of course not. He's just upset because he violated landscaping rules. Some people can't handle responsibility." I took a step closer. "If you step foot on my property again, I'll press charges. I don't care how many friends you have in this neighborhood." Karen leaned forward, her smile gone. "You think anyone will believe you? You're just one angry homeowner with a camera. I've been president here for 7 years. Her tone was low, venomous. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I stared right back. "No, Karen, you don't." I walked out of that office shaking with fury. My hands clenched so tight my nails left marks in my palms. That night I sat on the porch staring into the darkness, my mind racing. She was untouchable, smug, and too careful for the police to act. But she had one weakness, her obsession with control. And if she wanted to keep inspecting my home, then I'd give her something unforgettable to inspect. Something sticky, something bright, something yellow. Headphone, if your HOA president kept breaking into your home, how far would you go to make them stop? Would you call the cops or get creative? After that last encounter at the HOA office, something inside me snapped. Fear turned into fury. I was done playing nice, done hoping logic or reason would stop her. Karen wasn't just invading my home, she was invading my life. And no one, not the police, not the HOA board, not even my neighbors, could stop her. So I decided I'd stop her my way. That night I sat in my garage with the lights off, scrolling through security footage. Every second of her smug face testing my locks made my blood boil. I paused the video on her smirk, the one she gave right before leaving my porch like she owned it. That was the moment I whispered to myself, "You want to keep breaking into my house, Karen? Then you're going to regret it." I started sketching out a plan, not violent, not destructive, just humiliating. Something she couldn't twist around and blame on me. Then it hit me. I remembered this viral video from years ago. A guy who kept catching package thieves on his porch built a glitter bomb trap that exploded when someone tried to steal his boxes. I smiled. I wasn't going to use glitter. No, I had something much better in mind. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store. The cashier probably thought I was repainting the whole house. I bought a gallon of bright yellow paint, the kind used for warning lines on parking lots. It was thick, sticky, and nearly impossible to wash off quickly. The label even said long-lasting pigment. Perfect. When I got home, I mixed a few other things into it: cornstarch, a little honey, some outdoor sealant. It was petty science, but I wanted it to cling. If Karen was going to snoop again, she was going to wear my message. Then came the setup. I took down the top panel of my front door, a decorative piece that made it easy to hide a small container just above the frame. I rigged a simple trigger using fishing line and a hook connected to the door hinge. When the door opened, it would release a small metal latch and tip the container forward. Gravity would do the rest. I stood back and tested it with an empty jug first. Worked perfectly. Then I replaced it with my special mix, a full half-gallon of that vibrant, sticky yellow paint. I stared at it, heart racing. "This is insane," I muttered, "but it's also justice." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my dark living room, one hand on my phone, the other tapping restlessly on my knee. Every sound outside made me glance toward the door. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m. nothing. By 2, my eyes were heavy, and I finally dozed off on the couch. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the window, and everything looked peaceful. Almost too peaceful until I saw it. Footprints, again, muddy ones, right there on the porch. She'd been there, but not long enough to trigger the trap. I clenched my fists. "Next time," I said quietly. "Next time you're not walking away clean." For the next few days, I acted normal, watered my lawn, nodded to neighbors, even waved at Karen when she passed by, clipboard in hand. She smiled that fake politician smile and called out, "Glad to see you're keeping your property in order." Oh, I was keeping it in order all right. But the nights that followed were torture. Every creak, every sound outside sent a rush of adrenaline through me. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow, camera app open and ready. By the 5th night, I was running on caffeine and nerves. I checked the cameras before bed, nothing unusual. But something told me. She was planning her next inspection. And I was right. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Half asleep, I fumbled for it and opened the live feed. The porch light flickered. Then there she was, Karen, wearing a dark coat, holding a flashlight. She looked around, checked the street, and reached into her pocket. Out came the same silver key. "Oh no," I whispered. I started recording. She slid the key into the lock, turned it, and slowly pushed the door open. Click, whir, then splash. It was perfect. A glorious thick wave of bright yellow paint cascaded down on her, splattering her coat, hair, and face. The sound it made was almost musical, a sticky, wet schlup followed by her high-pitched shriek. What is this?" she screamed, stumbling backward. The flashlight hit the floor, spinning across the porch. The paint dripped off her in slow globs, staining everything she touched. I couldn't help it. I laughed, loud, the kind of laugh that had been building for weeks. Karen spun toward the sound, her eyes wide and furious. You did this to me." I stepped into the doorway, camera rolling. "Good morning, Karen. You wanted to inspect my property again? You're insane. This is assault. I'm calling the police." "Perfect," I said calmly. "Please do. I'll show them the footage of you breaking into my house again." She froze, blinking through the yellow, dripping down her eyelashes. "I wasn't breaking in. I was checking for gas leaks," I interrupted. That shut her up. Her jaw trembled as she wiped paint from her face. It smeared worse, making her look like a melted highlighter. Neighbors started to peek outside. First Tom, then the couple across the street. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. One neighbor shouted, "Karen, what happened to you?" She screamed. "He booby-trapped his house." Tom laughed. "He protected his house, you mean?" Karen stomped her foot, paint flying off in droplets. "You're all going to regret this. You can't embarrass the HOA president like this." "Seems like you did that yourself," I said. Within minutes, sirens filled the air. Two police cars pulled up, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, clearly trying not to laugh when they saw Karen dripping, furious, glowing yellow under the streetlight. One of them asked, "Ma'am, did you enter this man's home without permission?" I was inspecting. He's in violation of several. Violations don't give you the right to trespass, the officer said firmly. Sir, can we see your footage? I handed over my phone, still recording. He watched, then looked at Karen. Ma'am, he said, you're lucky. He did was use paint, Karen gasped. Are you taking his side? The officer sighed. No, ma'am, I'm taking the side of the law, and right now it looks like you broke it. Karen stood frozen, dripping yellow onto the pavement. And for the first time since she moved into this neighborhood, she was silent. Headphone, if you caught someone breaking into your home, would you have done the same thing? Or was the yellow paint too far? If I could have frozen that moment in time, I would have. Karen Doyle, queen of the HOA, self-proclaimed neighborhood enforcer, standing on my porch, dripping in thick, sticky yellow paint like a giant highlighter gone rogue. Her face twisted between shock, rage, and the slow, horrifying realization that she'd just humiliated herself in front of the entire neighborhood. And me? I just stood there with my camera still rolling, fighting back laughter. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, power. Officers tried to keep it professional, but even they couldn't hide their smirks. One of them, a tall guy with a buzz cut, cleared his throat. All right, let's get some statements here, he said, turning to me first. Sir, can you explain what happened tonight? I nodded, calm and polite. Yes, officer, this woman broke into my home again. I set up a harmless deterrent to mark whoever entered without permission. The paint just worked better than expected. Karen shrieked, harmless, look at me. She held out her arms, dripping yellow. The other officer, a woman, raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, were you invited onto his property? Karen's lips parted, then closed again. I was conducting an inspection. There have been violations. What kind of violations? The officer asked. Karen hesitated, eyes darting toward my camera. Improper fence maintenance, possible garbage non-compliance. The officer cut her off. At 3 in the morning, that shut her up. I bit my lip to keep from smiling. Then the neighbors started gathering closer. Tom was there, holding his phone like it was a front row ticket to the best show of the year. Mrs. Ellison from across the street whispered loudly, "Is that Karen? Oh my God, look at her." Someone laughed. Another person started recording. Within seconds, flashlights and camera phones surrounded us. Karen's face went red under the yellow paint. Everyone put those away. You don't have permission to record me. Tom grinned. Funny, that's what you told me when you peeked over my fence last week. The crowd chuckled. Even one of the officers looked away to hide his grin. Karen stomped her foot, a bad idea because it sent a fresh splatter of paint onto the pavement. This is harassment. You're all conspiring against me, the tall officer sighed. Ma'am, please calm down. You're trespassing on private property. We have video evidence and multiple witnesses. I'm the HOA president, she barked. That gives me authority to ensure compliance with. With what? I interrupted. My living room daycare. A few neighbors laughed. She glared daggers at me. You think this is funny? You've assaulted an HOA official. Assault, I said, raising my brows. So you're admitting you broke in? Her mouth opened, then closed again. She looked like a malfunctioning robot trying to reboot. The officer finally stepped in, serious now. Ma'am, you're lucky this homeowner didn't use force. We're filing an official trespass report. If you step foot on this property again, you will be charged. Karen's voice trembled with anger. This isn't over. I folded my arms. Oh, I'm sure it's not. The HOA still has to hear about this. That seemed to hit her harder than the paint did. She went quiet, eyes wide, realizing what was coming. The police eventually escorted her off my property, still dripping, still shouting about legal consequences and community integrity. I watched her stomp away toward her house, each step leaving bright yellow footprints on the sidewalk like breadcrumbs of shame. As the officers finished taking my statement, one of them smiled slightly. Gotta say, he murmured, I've been doing this job for 15 years, never seen a trespasser turn into a banana before. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Guess I found my color. He chuckled, handed me a card, and said, if she comes back, call us. But I have a feeling she'll think twice next time. When they drove off, I stood alone on my porch for a moment, the night finally quiet again. The sticky remnants of yellow paint still dripped from the frame, glowing faintly under the porch light. It wasn't just a mess, it was a victory. But I should have known Karen wouldn't take humiliation lying down. The next morning, I woke up to my phone blowing up. Texts, calls, and about a dozen notifications from neighbors. Someone had posted the video on the community Facebook page. The caption read, HOA president gets what she deserves, paint job of justice. By noon, the clip had nearly 3,000 views. People from nearby neighborhoods were commenting things like, finally someone stood up to her. And that yellow paint fits her personality. Karen, of course, was furious. She started calling people personally, threatening lawsuits and demanding they remove the video. But once the internet gets a hold of something, it's not that easy to erase. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang again, but this time it wasn't Karen. It was two members of the HOA board, Mrs. Ellison and Mr. Weber. They looked nervous. "Can we come in?" Mrs. Ellison asked. "We need to talk about last night." I let them in and offered coffee. Mr. Weber cleared his throat awkwardly. "We saw the video, everyone has." "Karen's insisting you assaulted her, but well," Mrs. Ellison cut in. "The board's seen the footage from your cameras too. We think it's time to reconsider her position." I tried to sound polite. "You mean remove her as president?" Mrs. Ellison nodded. "We'll hold an emergency meeting tomorrow. You're welcome to attend." I smiled. Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world. That night, the neighborhood was buzzing. You could almost feel the gossip floating through the air, whispers at mailboxes, texts between residents, the glow of phone screens lighting up with memes of Karen covered in yellow paint. And in her house, the blinds stayed shut. No patrols, no clipboard, just silence. For once, Karen Doyle wasn't the one knocking on doors. The next evening, I showed up to the HOA clubhouse early. The air was thick with tension. About 20 residents filled the chairs, whispering and pointing. At the front of the room sat Karen, arms crossed, wearing sunglasses indoors, probably to hide whatever yellow paint stains still hadn't come off. As I took my seat, she turned her head slightly, muttering, "Hope you're proud of yourself." I looked straight at her. "Actually, I am." The murmurs grew louder. The meeting was about to start, and I could feel something big coming. Karen was about to learn that her reign of control, her obsession with power, and her trespassing ways were finally catching up to her. And this time, the whole neighborhood was watching. If your HOA president humiliated herself like this, would you forgive her or make sure she faced full consequences? What would you do? The HOA clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and fresh tension. By the time I walked in, the place was packed, neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder, whispering, waiting. Phones out. Cameras ready? You could feel it, that electric energy right before a storm. Karen was already there, sitting at the front table in her usual spot, chin raised, pretending the sunglasses and heavy foundation could hide the faint yellow tint still clinging to her hairline. Beside her sat the rest of the board. Mrs. Ellison, calm and collected, Mr. Weber nervously flipping through papers, and a new face, a city liaison brought in to ensure procedural fairness. Karen tapped her clipboard like a judge calling for order. "Let's begin," she said sharply, her voice echoing through the room. "We're here to address the egregious incident that took place 2 nights ago involving one of our residents' reckless actions against your HOA president, me." The murmurs grew louder. Someone whispered, "Oh, this is gonna be good." Karen straightened her papers. "As you may have seen on social media, due to the irresponsible actions of certain neighbors, a misleading video has circulated. I'm here to correct the narrative before this community falls into chaos." I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, watching her closely. She continued, "On the night in question, I was performing a late-night safety inspection after multiple reports of gas odors in the area. I was merely doing my duty as HOA president when I was ambushed by a malicious trap that dumped yellow paint all over me." The crowd murmured in disbelief. One man in the back muttered, "Gas odors at 3 a.m.? Yeah, right." Karen ignored him. "This was an act of aggression, a clear violation of HOA conduct and possibly criminal. I'm requesting immediate sanctions against the homeowner responsible and—" "Karen." Mrs. Ellison's voice cut through the room like a knife. She stood folding her hands calmly in front of her. "Before you continue, we've already reviewed the footage, all of it." Karen blinked. "Excuse me." "The homeowner provided security camera recordings from multiple angles," Mrs. Ellison said, "and it shows you entering his property without permission, multiple times." The room erupted in whispers. Phones lifted again. Someone laughed. Karen slammed her clipboard down. "That video was edited. You think you can trust that man's word over mine?" Tom, my neighbor, raised his hand. "Actually, I've got my own footage." Karen froze. "What?" He pulled out his phone, connected it to the projector, and the screen behind the board flickered to life. There she was, Karen, creeping across my porch in the dark, trying the door handle. Her flashlight beam danced across the window. Then the sound, click, whir, and the glorious splash. The crowd gasped and then broke into laughter. Karen's scream echoed through the speakers. "What is this?" The camera caught every second, the paint dripping, her frantic yelling, my calm voice saying, "You wanted to inspect my property again?" Even Mrs. Ellison couldn't hide a smirk. When the video ended, the room was silent except for a few stifled laughs. Karen's face went pale, her hands trembling. This is harassment. You all think this is funny. You're laughing at me." Mr. Weber spoke softly. "Karen, you broke into a homeowner's house multiple times. You used your position to harass residents. That's not leadership, that's abuse of power." I was doing my job," she snapped. Mrs. Ellison shook her head. No, Karen, you were trespassing, and according to the police report, this isn't your first warning. The city liaison cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. The HOA's authority does not extend to entering private property without consent. That's illegal under municipal code. If these actions continue, you could face charges. Karen looked around desperately, searching for support, but every face was against her. Even her closest allies avoided her gaze. Then came the final blow. Mrs. Ellison picked up a paper and read aloud, "Motion to remove Karen Doyle from the position of HOA president, effective immediately, pending investigation and permanent disqualification from any future leadership role." Karen's mouth fell open. "You can't do this," Mr. Weber sighed. "We can, and we're doing it now." Mrs. Ellison looked at the crowd. All in favor. Every hand shot up. Every single one, even Tom's, even the quiet family that usually avoided drama, even the couple Karen had once fined for having a trampoline. Karen stood, shaking with rage. "You're all ungrateful. I kept this place in order. Without me, this neighborhood will fall apart." I stepped forward. "Funny, I think it just got a lot brighter." The crowd burst into laughter. Karen's face flushed crimson, or maybe it was just the leftover yellow blending in. She grabbed her clipboard, smacked it against the table, and stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "Every one of you." The door slammed so hard the projector screen rattled. For a long moment, nobody said a word. Then Mrs. Ellison exhaled. "Well, that's done." Applause erupted. Cheers followed. Someone shouted, "Freedom!" and everyone laughed again. Mr. Weber turned to me. "Thank you for standing up to her. You might have just saved this whole neighborhood." I smiled faintly. "I didn't want revenge, I just wanted peace." Mrs. Ellison nodded. "Sometimes peace needs a little push or a bucket of paint." We all laughed again, but deep down I felt something different. Relief, gratitude. The tightness in my chest that had been there for months was finally gone. As I walked home that evening, the air felt lighter. The neighborhood seemed quieter. The sun was setting behind the row of houses, glowing golden, almost the same color as that paint. Tom caught up to me halfway down the sidewalk. "So," he said, grinning, "what are you gonna do now that the Queen's been dethroned?" I chuckled. "Probably change my locks again, just in case," he laughed. "Smart man." We passed Karen's house on the corner. The blinds were shut tight. Her once perfect lawn had a few brown patches now. Maybe she'd stopped her daily inspections. Maybe she was too busy scrubbing yellow out of her hair. I didn't feel anger anymore, just closure. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't ruining someone's life, it's watching them ruin it themselves. Headphone, if your HOA president tried to twist the story after getting caught, how would you handle it? Would you expose them publicly or let karma do its job? You'd think after being exposed, humiliated, and officially kicked out of the HOA, Karen would have disappeared quietly. But that's the thing about people like her, they don't vanish. They linger like a stain you can't scrub out no matter how hard you try. At first it was quiet, too quiet. No more clipboard patrols, no more anonymous violation notices, no more condescending emails about lawn height or garbage bin placement. The neighborhood actually breathed again. But peace never lasts long with someone like Karen Doyle around. It started small, whispers, rumors. Mrs. Ellison mentioned that someone had been spreading stories online, claiming I booby-trapped my door with intent to harm. Tom told me a few neighbors had gotten strange emails about me unsigned, but clearly written by someone who knew way too many details about my life. Then one morning, I woke up to see my name plastered all over the local community Facebook page. "Man endangers HOA president in vicious prank, faces legal action. Sources say he's under police investigation." I wasn't under investigation, not even close, but that didn't matter. The damage was done. I scrolled through the comments, heart pounding. "Wait, I thought she broke into his house." "Nah, he's lying. You can't just dump paint on someone." This is why HOAs exist, to keep psychos like him in check. My jaw tightened. The account that posted it had no profile picture, but the username, Community Truth Teller. Classic Karen move. I called Mrs. Ellison right away. She sighed. "You're not the only one she's targeting. She's been emailing the board nonstop, demanding we reinstate her. Claims you're spreading defamatory lies. She even sent us a letter threatening to sue." I ran a hand through my hair. "Can she actually do that?" "She can try," Mrs. Ellison said, "but the police report and your footage speak for themselves. She's just trying to scare you." Still, that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Karen sitting in her dark house, plotting, watching. Waiting. The next morning, it got worse. When I opened my front door, there was a letter taped to it, typed, not handwritten. It read, "You think you've won, but this isn't over. You ruined my life, now I'll ruin yours." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I showed it to Tom later that day. He whistled low. "That woman's unhinged, man. You should call the cops again." "I already did," I said. "They said unless she steps on my property again, it's just words." "Words from a psycho," Tom muttered. That night I made sure every door and window was locked. I even set up new motion sensors and replaced my outdoor cameras with higher quality ones. But still, the feeling of being watched never went away. And I was right to trust my gut. A few days later, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I sat up, heart hammering, checked the camera feed, and there she was, Karen, standing at the end of my driveway in the dark, arms folded. Staring straight into the camera, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I froze, hands shaking, then grabbed my phone and dialed 911. By the time the police arrived, she was gone. Just tire tracks on the curb and the faint sound of an engine fading down the street. The officers took another report, but one of them shook his head. "She's towing the line, sir. Not illegal to stand on the street. Creepy, yeah, but not arrestable." I stared at the screen, replaying the footage again and again. The look in her eyes wasn't anger anymore, it was obsession. The next day, the retaliation escalated. Someone spray-painted "liar" on my fence, then eggs on my mailbox, then a dead plant left on my porch wrapped in a note that said, "Rot like your lies." I knew it was her, but proving it was impossible. Mrs. Ellison finally called an emergency HOA meeting. "We can't ignore this," she told me. "Even if she's been removed, she's still causing chaos. We need to make it official." That evening, half the neighborhood showed up. People were angry not just at Karen, but at what she'd done to all of us. Tom stood up. "This isn't just about paint anymore. She's threatening people. She's vandalizing property. What's next?" Mrs. Ellison nodded grimly. "We'll file a restraining order as a community. Multiple complaints should get the city's attention." As they talked, I looked out the clubhouse window. Swear for just a second I saw a familiar figure across the street. Karen, watching from her car. When our eyes met, she smiled. That cold, empty smile that said, "You haven't beaten me yet." Then she drove off into the night. That was the moment I realized something chilling. This wasn't about the HOA anymore. This was personal. I wasn't just a homeowner who fought back. I was the symbol of everything she couldn't control. And people like Karen, they can't stand losing control. Later that week, I got an unexpected call from the local police chief himself. "Sir," he said, "we've received multiple reports about Ms. Doyle's behavior, trespassing, harassment, vandalism. We're putting together a formal case. If you have any new evidence, now's the time." Finally, some hope. I sent them everything, videos, photos, messages, even the paint footage again. The officer thanked me and promised, "We'll handle it." That night, I sat on my porch with Tom, sipping a beer under the stars. "Think it's finally over?" he asked. I looked at the faint yellow stain still lingering on the doorframe, smiled slightly, and said, "With Karen, it's never really over, but this time she's running out of moves." Tom chuckled. "Guess she's about to find out karma doesn't need HOA approval." I laughed, a tired, genuine laugh. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. Karen's retaliation wasn't over yet. She was quiet now. Too quiet, and quiet from someone like her meant a storm was coming. If your obsessive HOA neighbor started retaliating after getting exposed, what would you do? Stay calm or fight back harder? For a few days, everything went quiet again. No new rumors, no messages, no vandalism. I almost let myself believe it was over, that maybe, finally, Karen Doyle had run out of energy to torment me. But that's the thing about people who thrive on control. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means they're planning. And sure enough, that storm I felt brewing hit hard. It started one evening just after sunset. I was cooking dinner, the TV humming softly in the background, when I heard it, a faint thud from outside. Not loud, but sharp enough to make me freeze. I glanced at the window. Nothing. The motion lights didn't trigger. Another thud. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the security camera app. The feed flickered for a moment, static. Then black screen, all 4 cameras offline. That's when my stomach dropped. Someone was out there. I moved quietly toward the door, heart pounding. Through the peephole, I could just make out a shadow, small, crouched low near the garage. I didn't wait. I hit record on my phone and shouted, "Who's there?" The shadow jerked up, and in the dim porch light, I saw it. Karen. Covered head to toe in a dark hoodie, clutching something metallic, a hammer. She froze for half a second before darting away into the yard. I yanked open the door. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" She didn't answer, just ran. I sprinted after her, phone still recording, shouting for her to stop. She cut across my lawn toward the side fence, but her foot caught on the sprinkler hose. She went down hard, the hammer clattering across the pavement. By the time I reached her, she was on her knees, panting, eyes wild. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "I lost my job, my reputation, my friends won't even talk to me. You did this to me." I backed up a step, keeping my phone steady. "Karen, you did this to yourself. I told you to stay away." She shook her head violently. "You think you're the hero. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool. You broke into my home," I snapped. "You terrorized this whole neighborhood." Tears streaked her face, but her eyes were still blazing with that same rage I'd seen the night of the paint trap. "I just wanted things to be perfect," she hissed. "People respected me. They listened to me. And then you took that away." "Respect isn't fear, Karen," I said quietly. "And perfection doesn't mean control." She lunged forward suddenly, trying to grab my phone. I stumbled back, but before she could reach me, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. Sirens. The police had arrived. Apparently one of the neighbors, probably Tom, had seen the whole thing on his camera feed and called 911. Within seconds, two officers were out of the car, shouting, "Ma'am, drop the hammer, step back." Karen froze again, trembling. The hammer still lay on the ground, glinting under the streetlights. She raised her hands, crying now. "He set me up, he's been stalking me." I couldn't even react. I was too tired, too drained. I just handed the officers my phone. "It's all on video." They cuffed her right there on the pavement as she screamed about false accusations and conspiracies. But no one believed her anymore. Neighbors started coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Tom jogged over, phone in hand. "I got the whole thing," he told one of the officers. "She was smashing his cameras." The officer nodded. "That lines up with what we're seeing. Vandalism, trespassing, attempted break-in. This time, she's not walking away with a warning." As they led her toward the cruiser, Karen looked back at me, a mix of fury, heartbreak, and desperation twisting across her face. "You think you've won?" she shouted. "You haven't. I'll make sure you regret this." The officer gently pushed her into the backseat and closed the door. And just like that, she was gone. The street fell silent except for the faint hum of police radios and the murmur of curious neighbors. Mrs. Ellison arrived a few minutes later, wrapped in a shawl, her face pale. "Is it true?" she asked softly. "Did she really try to break in again?" I nodded. "She was destroying my cameras." Mrs. Ellison sighed, shaking her head. "I tried to warn her. She couldn't let go of the power. Now she's lost everything." Tom patted my shoulder. "Hey, at least it's finally over." But I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the faint yellow mark still on my doorframe, the one I'd never gotten around to cleaning off. That mark used to represent anger, humiliation, revenge. Now it was a reminder of what happens when obsession and control go unchecked. Later that night, after the officers finished taking statements and everyone had gone home, I sat on my porch again, the same spot where this whole nightmare started. The cool air was still, peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt safe. A few days later, the police confirmed that Karen had been charged with multiple counts: trespassing, destruction of property, and harassment. They found tools in her car along with printouts of my social media pages, notes about my schedule, and even screenshots of my house's layout from Google Maps. She'd been planning something far worse. When I read the report, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from relief. It was over. Really, truly over. A week later, Mrs. Ellison and the board hosted a neighborhood gathering. No HOA business, no rules, just a potluck to celebrate a new start. People laughed again. Kids played on lawns without being scolded. For the first time, the neighborhood felt like home again. Tom clinked his glass and said, "To fresh beginnings and to paint that saved us all." Everyone laughed. Even I couldn't help it. As the sun dipped low, painting the houses gold, I looked around and smiled. Karen's house sat dark and empty now, for sale sign out front. The lawn, once immaculate, had grown wild. Maybe it was poetic justice. Sometimes karma doesn't come fast, but when it does, it hits like a bucket of paint. Headphone, if someone like Karen lost everything because they couldn't stop their obsession, would you feel sorry for them or think they finally got what they deserved? Peace felt strange at first. Almost unnatural, like a sound you weren't sure you could trust. For months, I'd lived in constant tension, waiting for the next knock, the next violation notice, the next scream through the door. And suddenly, there was none of that, just quiet. The police had confirmed that Karen was facing multiple charges. She'd been released on bail but ordered to stay away from me, the HOA board, and the entire subdivision. Her house was officially listed for sale. No one saw her return. No cars, no lights, nothing. But even in her absence, her shadow lingered. When I walked past her house, I'd catch myself glancing at the dark windows, half expecting them to flicker open. It's funny how someone can haunt a place without even being there. The neighborhood, though, it was healing. For the first time in years, people talked to each other without fear of getting reported. Kids drew chalk on the sidewalks. Someone even put up a bird feeder in their yard, something Karen had banned because it attracted pests. Mrs. Ellison, now the acting HOA president, changed everything. Meetings became friendly, open, honest. No more citations, no more power trips, just neighbors trying to make the place better. At one of those meetings, Tom stood up and said, "You know, I think we should make that yellow paint doorframe a landmark." Everyone laughed. Mrs. Ellison added, "Maybe call it the Wall of Freedom." It was the first time we could all joke about it, laugh instead of flinch. But deep down, I still couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't completely over. Call it paranoia or maybe just the residue of fear after months of harassment. One night, about 3 weeks after Karen's arrest, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. The handwriting neat and careful. My chest tightened as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank except for one line typed across the middle. "You can repaint the door, but you'll never erase me." No name, no signature. Just that, my stomach dropped. I called the police immediately. They came, took the note, and said they'd add it to the file. The officer tried to reassure me, could just be a prank, sir. People online saw the story, maybe someone's trying to get a reaction. But I knew better. The tone, the phrasing, that was Karen. I could almost hear her voice saying it. That night, I left every light on. The porch, the hallway, even the kitchen. Sleep didn't come easy. When the sun finally rose, I walked outside and stood by the doorframe, that stubborn yellow stain still clinging to the wood. It had become something more than a mark. It was a reminder of everything I'd survived. Tom came by later holding 2 coffees. "You okay, man?" I handed him the letter. He read it, frowning. "You think it's her?" "I don't think," I said quietly. "I know," he sighed. "Then we'll make sure she never comes back. I installed new cameras on the streetlight across from your place. If she even drives by, we'll catch it." That helped a little. But still, for the next few days, I found myself double-checking locks, glancing out the window whenever a car slowed down near my house. The mind does that after trauma. It keeps the ghosts alive even when the danger's gone. A week later, I got a call from the police. "Mr. Thompson," the officer said, "we ran prints on that letter. They match Ms. Doyle's." My throat went dry. "So she's still around?" "She's violating her restraining order," he said. "We'll be issuing a warrant." That was the moment I finally exhaled, not because I was scared, but because I realized something. Karen had trapped herself. Her obsession wasn't about me anymore. It was about the idea of losing control. She couldn't accept that she wasn't the queen of the neighborhood, that her rules didn't define us anymore. And even as she spiraled, the community she'd tried to dominate was thriving without her. A few days later, I walked through the park with Mrs. Ellison and Tom. The air was crisp, filled with the sound of laughter and barbecue smoke. Someone had set up a little neighborhood picnic. Kids chased each other through the grass. "This," Mrs. Ellison said softly, "is what she never understood. Control doesn't make a community. Compassion does." I nodded. "Maybe someday she'll realize that," Tom chuckled. "Doubt it, but hey, maybe she'll start a new HOA in prison." We all laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from exhaustion and relief blended together. When I got home that evening, I sat on my porch with a fresh coat of paint and a brush. I hesitated for a moment, staring at that yellow mark. Then I smiled and left it there. Some scars aren't meant to be covered. They're proof you made it through. I looked around the neighborhood, the sunset painting everything in warm gold. For once, it felt right. Still, as the wind rustled the trees, I couldn't shake the faintest feeling that somewhere out there, Karen was watching. Not close, not nearby, but watching all the same, and maybe that was okay. Because now I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd taken back my home, my peace, my life. And no letter, no threat, no ghost from the past could take that away again. Headphone, would you have left the paint mark too, as a reminder of what you overcame? Or would you erase every trace of it to finally move on? It's strange how time can heal wounds you thought would never close, but also leave behind the faintest scars as reminders of what once was. 3 months had passed since Karen's arrest for violating her restraining order. The neighborhood had moved on. The lawns were green again, laughter had returned, and even the board meetings felt more like social gatherings than interrogations. But for me, peace was still something I was learning to accept. That yellow streak on my doorframe, the mark of her downfall, still shone under the porch light. Neighbors called it the line of freedom. Some joked it should be framed. Others said it was a warning sign to any future HOA tyrants. To me, it was both a memory of pain and the proof that I'd reclaimed my space. But I never expected the final twist to come the way it did. One crisp Saturday morning, as I was sipping coffee on the porch, I saw a police cruiser stop in front of Karen's old house. A new family had moved in weeks ago, the Marshalls, a young couple with a toddler. The officer knocked, chatted briefly, then walked over toward me. "Mr. Thompson?" he asked. "Yes, sir," he nodded. "Thought you'd want to know. Ms. Doyle's case just wrapped up in court. She accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and community service. She's also been barred from joining or managing any HOA for life." I blinked, letting that sink in. "Community service, huh?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, painting public buildings, ironically enough." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound rough but genuine. "Guess the yellow paint came full circle." He tipped his hat and walked back to his car, leaving me standing there, a little stunned, a little relieved. That was it. It was over. Karen had been stripped of everything she clung to: power, control, reputation. Now she'd spend her days painting walls she'd once judged for being the wrong shade. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally understand what it felt like to be on the other side of her own rules. That evening, the neighborhood threw a small party at the park. The air smelled like grilled food and fresh grass. Someone hung a banner that said, "Freedom Day, no more Karen." Everyone laughed, took photos, and shared stories of their own run-ins with her. Tom, ever the jokester, handed me a small wooden plaque. Burned into it were the words, "To the man who painted justice yellow." The crowd cheered. I couldn't stop smiling, not because I wanted the attention, but because it finally felt like the nightmare had become a story. A story that ended with laughter instead of fear. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch again. The air was still warm, crickets chirping softly. I looked out at the peaceful neighborhood and whispered, "You lost, Karen, but I hope you find yourself again." Because that was the truth. Revenge wasn't about destroying someone. It was about taking back what they tried to steal, and I had taken back everything. As the days turned into weeks, life fell beautifully into rhythm again. The doorframe, still stained yellow, became something of a local legend. Kids would point and say, "That's where the crazy HOA lady got caught." Their parents would laugh, but sometimes, when they thought no one was looking, they'd touch the frame like it carried some kind of quiet strength. One morning, a letter arrived, this time from the court. Inside was a statement from Karen, handwritten and shaky. "Mr. Thompson, I've had a lot of time to think. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I was lonely, angry, and desperate to control something because my own life was falling apart. I saw your independence as a threat instead of an example. I ruined so much trying to prove I was right. The yellow paint was justice, but it was also mercy. You didn't destroy me, you forced me to see myself. I hope someday I can be someone better. Karen Doyle." I read it twice, 3 times. For the first time since all of this began, I didn't feel anger. I felt closure. She wasn't my enemy anymore. She was just a broken person who finally realized she'd broken too much. That evening, I took out a small can of white paint. Neighbors watched curiously as I stood by the doorframe again. Tom called out, "You're painting over it." I smiled softly. "Yeah, I think it's time." Each brushstroke covered the yellow little by little. It felt symbolic, not erasing the past, but sealing it with peace. When I finished, the frame gleamed clean and white under the porch light. For the first time, the house looked whole again. But before I went inside, I took a tiny brush and painted one thin yellow line, small, subtle, running along the bottom corner of the frame. A reminder, not of her, but of me. Of what it means to stand up for yourself when everyone else tells you to stay quiet. As I locked the door that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Karen had her justice. I had my peace. And the neighborhood had its freedom. Sometimes, closure isn't about slamming the door shut. It's about painting over it, and knowing that what's underneath will never control you again. Headphones, so tell me, would you have forgiven Karen after that letter, or would you have left that yellow mark forever? What does closure look like to you?